Well, good evening, everyone, and thanks for joining me for this week's deep dive. I wanted to take some time tonight just to reflect back on the past year, because it's been just a little over a year ago that this whole COVID lockdown thing started and really impacted the life of our church. It's hard to believe that the time has gone by so quickly, but it was actually back on March 15th that we, for the first time, were not able to meet together as a church because of the pandemic. In fact, I thought it'd be kind of fun to go back and just show you a short clip from that first Sunday when we had to go live online for church. Take a look at this. I think we're live. Let's go. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to a different kind of church service. We're a small group here, but we know there are a lot of you out there, and we're glad that you're taking the time to join us, spend some time together, getting caught up on information, getting some singing done, some praying, and listening to God's Word. And so we just trust that you'll make this a really special time with you and the Lord this morning and with us. I've shared this before, but that first Sunday going live was pretty wild. In fact, the Monday of that week, Monday before that Sunday, we were talking about what happens if they lock things down and would we ever start live streaming services? And the time I said, oh, we're never going to do that. We just didn't see how that would be possible. That was on Monday. By Friday that week, we decided that we were going to have to start live streaming our services, but we'd never done it before. And on Sunday, we did our first live stream. The first service we attempted was a disaster. We were having problems with the computer, the audio was terrible, and we got to the second service, and of course with a live stream, you're on the clock. And so there's this frantic half hour between the first and second service while we're trying to figure out what had gone wrong. And finally, we just gave up doing anything from the stage. We couldn't get the sound system figured out. And as you could see in that clip, we ended up just standing on the floor in front of this computer and doing church right there. It was pretty wild those first few days trying to sort this all out. One of the things that started up right away that first week was I got this idea to do a little daily 15-minute program just to help us stay connected. And we called that DCC Daily. And so we did that for quite a while, and then eventually that went to a 3 times per week program that I called DCC Today. And then eventually we transitioned away from that. Now we're just doing this once a week, Thursday almost live program that I'm doing. But before we were done with DCC Daily and DCC Today, we actually had recorded 143 episodes. And it was a really fun way for all of us to stay connected during that time. Of course, now we're doing it once a week, just Thursday mornings, doing the little, I call it almost live because I'm still actually pre-recording it on Wednesday afternoons, but just trying to give you the most up-to-date information for the church. It was on May 3rd, about 6 weeks in, that I did a kind of a state of the church address. I think about a 45-minute online presentation that I called Moving Forward, Regathering the Church. And I thought I'd show you just a little clip out of that. One, just to reflect back on where we've come from, and also you'll hear me talk about what it was like for the staff in those first weeks as we tried to sort through everything. Listen to this. Well, good evening, everyone. I can't tell you how much I wish that you were all here instead of there. It's kind of lonely in here. These past 6 weeks, of course, have been unprecedented for our country, for our world, certainly for Dungeness Community Church. Life at one level has been pretty quiet. At another, I would have to say this has been some of the busiest and most challenging days that we as a staff have faced. I explained to someone recently that for our church staff, I think the feeling has been that we were trying to build a hot rod and drive it at 100 miles an hour at the same time. So what's the plan? How do we create a structure that is strong and flexible given all the unknowns that lie before us? Well, let me show you where we were and what happened. So here's where we were. We were one big happy lump. And then somebody hit the spin cycle. And what happened was scattered chaos. We went everywhere. Some people had good connections, some had weak connections, and some had no connections at all. A lot of us realized that we were missing more on a Sunday morning than just hearing live music or hearing a preacher talk up close and personal. What we were missing is we were missing the people in our pew. We were missing those moments of fellowship and conversation and encouragement. So the question is, how do we find our seats again? How do we get consistently connected with a group of friends? Even if it's by phone, that we know will be there. Imagine if we had a network of liaisons, people that were connecting directly with church leadership, and they in turn could act as a hub to communicate regularly with a small group of friends. And that communication could be anything ranging from a Zoom video conference to a phone call. Now, with those connections made, and when the time comes that small groups can get together, there's a natural place to go. You already know who you could get together with. You already know who's sitting in your pew. And that means if you already know that, then it's a pretty simple thing to get together and sit on their couch, even if you can't yet come back to the church building. And then, when things open up a little more, those little groups can easily merge into bigger groups. Here's the great thing about organizing ourselves this way. If the restrictions cycle backwards, you don't lose your seat. Even if we have to shelter in place again, it won't be chaos. We will still be meaningfully connected. You still will know who is sitting in your pew. And a structure like this accommodates variety. Even when we are allowed to meet together as a large group, there are going to be some small groups that won't be ready to join with that big group yet. They will have their own set of concerns, maybe health concerns, that they feel it's better for them to stay in a small group. There are going to be other people that because of their health concerns, they're going to need to continue to stay at home on their own. But everyone will still be connected. The hubs will still be there. The structure will still be in place, whether you're in the big group, a small group, or you're staying at home. I look forward to the day that we can fill this place up again. And until then, I know that God has you in his grip. Good night. Well, we did begin to get things figured out. We got into more of a regular flow. One of the unusual things for me was that I actually started taking Sunday as my day off, which pastors never take Sundays as a day off. But because everything was being pre-recorded, I had actually done all the Sunday stuff before we got to Sunday. So I was like everyone else. Burnett and I would sit in our living room and do church on a Sunday morning, watching it online. So that was a pretty interesting experience, but it was also really encouraging to see the way that so many of you pulled together, people that were phoning each other. All of us became experts in Zoom and another service called Free Conference Call. And it was just really exciting to see how people were stepping up and learning new technology and doing new things to figure out how to maintain fellowship and community during this whole time. And then in August, we did a series of town hall meetings, invited anyone that wanted to come and meet with us as staff so we could hear from you. You could hear from us. That was a really good time. First time that we'd seen a number of you in person. And so really appreciate all those who came out and shared with us. The first time that we tried to get everybody together was in August when we did what was going to be our big summer celebration at Carrie Blake Park, but then had to turn into a drive-in service at the Cole Farm. And it was really fun to see a bunch of you show up that day, for that drive-in service. In fact, I think we've got some footage here of that. Let's take a look at that for a moment.
Some glad morning when this life is all around, fly away to a home on God's celestial shores. I'll fly away.
Well, as we moved into the fall, we decided that we wanted to do something to just kind of help pull us all together. And so we ordered up a bunch of mugs, and the mugs were with the new church logo that we had just had designed, and we tried to get those out to all of the families in our church. A small army of volunteers helped us distribute those, and they were really well received, and a lot of you had fun with the mugs, as you can see from this little one who loves her new mug. Along with that, there was a newsletter we sent out, and we then were able to start in-person services again on September 13th. And we were doing a morning service at 9 a.m. and we were able to continue that up until November 15th. And then things kind of locked down again. And they stayed that way through the beginning of the year. And then we once again started in-person services on January 10th. And at this point, we actually have gone to 2 morning services, and we also have children's ministries that has been able to restart at our 10:45 service. So the church, as far as the things we're able to do together, we are slowly coming back online. And as more people are getting vaccinated, we're seeing more and more of you that are feeling comfortable coming back to church on a Sunday morning. And it's just been great to see more people. But of course, we now have adjusted, and we're still doing everything online as well. So whether you're ready to come back to an in-person service or whether you're still worshiping and meeting with us online, either way, we are still finding ways to be together and worship together. During this whole COVID pandemic, there have also been a number of changes in terms of staff. Back in April 26th, Pastor Wayne, who had been first our youth pastor and then our pastor of adult ministries, had been with DCC for 25 years, retired. And Pastor Sean, who had been our worship director, stepped into that role of adult ministries and helping to organize our small group ministries. And Sean stepped into organizing small groups right at the moment when all of our groups were forced to disband. And so Sean has had to do a lot of work these past few months figuring out how do we promote small group fellowship that is so vital in a time like this, and he's done a wonderful job. Of course, that left our worship director slot unfilled, and I'll talk about that some more in a minute. But then in July, David Piper, our student ministries pastor, made the decision that the time was right for him to go back to seminary to get his master's degree. And so he left, and Darren Sweeney, who we've been supporting as one of our missionaries working with Hope 61, Darren's ministry there requires lots of travel, and of course he couldn't travel because of the pandemic, so he could only do about half of his ministry with Hope 61, and so we brought him in to work part-time with our youth. And Darren has done a fantastic job with our youth ministries. We have a whole bunch of high school and junior high students coming out each week. They're able to meet in person now, and so we're really grateful that Darren has stepped in. Then in July, one of the things that happened all through this was, of course, the need to generate lots of video content. And that was falling to myself. I have some video background, so I was doing a lot of video editing. Dale Arvison was helping us with a lot of video editing. He was volunteering. But we recognized we really needed someone to help us do it better. And God just opened some unique and amazing doors that we were able to bring in Shane Simonson. And Shane has got a tremendous professional background in video production and communications. And you can tell when you see the production that we have now for our Sunday morning services and other things, just the difference that Shane has brought and has been such a great part of our staff. One of the things I feel bad about having a new staff person join us during this pandemic has been that so many of you have not been able to get to know Shane, his wife Angela, and their son Samuel on a personal basis yet, but you're going to get to know him, and I think you're going to love him like we do. So that got us through July, and then in October, Jane Boltadop, who had been our lead secretary for some time, made the decision that she was going to retire and move to Bellingham to be close to family. And Jennifer Freimeyer, who'd been our assistant secretary, moved into that lead secretary position. And so there's been this bit of shuffling among the staff, but all of the changes have been really good ones. And we're just grateful. I am so grateful for the team that we have as a staff working together. There have been some gaps that have been left. I mentioned the worship director gap. We have volunteers who have stepped in. My wife, Burnett, and Sue Heike are working to give some direction to all the different volunteer musicians there. And that's working okay right now because we're not able to really run the full-fledged program we'd like to have. And then we've got several volunteers who have stepped up to help out in the office. So we really appreciate the help that they're bringing there for Jennifer and Colleen. The other thing that happened during this past year that has been difficult has been a number of passings, people who have gone to be with the Lord. And one of those that was very significant to me in the life of our church was the passing of our brother Neil Smith. Neil was the first pastor that was ever called to Dungeness Community Church. Neil was the lead pastor for almost 30 years. When Burnett and I first came back to Sequim, Neil just befriended me and was really instrumental in my own life and in the lives of so many of us. And I really was saddened when Neil passed that we were not able to recognize and honor Neil and Melanie in the way that I wish we could have. But I know that many of you have reached out to Melanie, and we just so appreciate the years of ministry that Neil gave to this church and really a foundation that he set for our ministry. And I know others of you have lost spouses, parents, others during this time, and I am so sorry that we've not been able to memorialize some of those loved ones the way we would have liked. But please know that our love and our prayers are with you. Well, I asked several of you to respond to what it's been like this year of COVID. I sent out a survey, and almost 60 of you responded back to that survey. So lots and lots of thoughts. I just thank you all so much for it. What I decided to do, rather than go through all of that, was I invited some representative people to join me for a little Zoom conversation just to talk about their reflections, their experience this year with COVID. So let's go to that interview now. One of the questions that I put on the survey was just what have been some of the really hard experiences for you moving through this year with COVID? And Jennifer, you'd made some comments about both your family as well as having, well, and especially your kids being at home. What's it been like for you this year?
Yeah, it's been hard. Like I'm sure it has for a lot of people. But the hardest for me was my parents. They live in Texas, and we had made a plan to go visit them right before Thanksgiving hit. Because we thought we're doing a little bit better. And then all of a sudden that is when kind of the second wave hit and they really shut things down. And so we weren't able to go see them. And I haven't seen them in 2 years. And that was really, really tough.
Wow.
And then pretty much the following week, Sydney got a blow when she went to driver's ed, and it's the in-car drive for an hour, and her driving instructor the very next day tested positive for COVID. So she had to go into quarantine, strict quarantine for 2 weeks. And that was the week she was supposed to video for her Nutcracker ballet solo that she had worked really hard on for months and months and months. And they couldn't reshoot it at that point because the next week was when they were going to show it at the drive-in movie theater in Port Townsend. So yeah, it was really hard. Hard couple weeks. Yeah.
Oh,
And your family in Texas, they've just gone through all of the power outages and the cold down there, haven't they?
Yeah, and my dad still does not have water at his apartment. It's been a week and a half. So yeah,
Wow.
It's been a long COVID year for them too.
Yeah. Yeah. Russ and Aaron, how about for you guys?
I get to go to work every day, so that really hasn't changed. But it's more, people, our friends that live one state away, or my brother and his wife and kids were supposed to come out. That we haven't seen them. Like we've only seen their twin sons once since they were born 8 years ago, and they were supposed to come out. Just the restrictions on our social time with extended family.
well, and for the kids too. I mean, I was
yeah.
doing really okay until there was the one day that I asked, because I try and check in with the kids regularly, and Reagan's had Ezra and Alita, so cousins her age that she's been able to play with, and Cash really hasn't had anyone. And there was one day when I checked in with him and he just looked at me and he goes, "Mom, I'm so lonely," and it just broke my heart. And so it's just seeing how hard it's been on the kids has been hardest for me. So I mean, I can do Zoom, I can do this kind of stuff and be okay, but for the kids it's totally different. So it's been hard to walk them through it.
Yeah. And Burnett, you talked about, for us, one of the hard things.
Yeah, our Canadian kids. Yeah. So Matt and
Oh yeah.
we're up in BC. And so you want to tell the funny thing yet?
Sure.
Okay, so some of you may have experienced this too, but Boundary Road, which is one of the places where you can go right up to the boundary, and there's a monument there that says Canada, US, and you could be 10 feet away from them, but you can't touch them or pass anything across. There was just a ditch between us, and there we are. So it was kind of funny and sad at the same time, because it was just ridiculous. You're so close yet so far, and they haven't been able to come down since all the shutdowns. So it's been a year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, it hasn't all been bad. What are some positives that have come out of this experience for you? And Carlene, how about you? What's been a positive in this?
Well, I had just a few months before COVID hit, excuse me, I had moved into my new house. So that was new, but I'm so thrilled with my new house that, it just, for me, being single and older and not worrying about, my little kids not seeing their friends or losing a job. But one of my favorite things is that I just have so much more time with the Lord. It's just, I'm an early riser and I get up in the morning, and even though I have a lot of Zoom stuff and people come over literally almost every day, I just have hours in the morning that are just my time with the Lord. And it has been such a blessing for me. And I realize that's unique. Like I said, I live alone and I don't have little kids and no worries about, financial stuff. It's really and that is my best change.
That's good. Now, I know you said that for you, actually in your business, your consulting business, this has been a good thing, hasn't it? How so?
Yeah. So learning how to use Zoom has just opened up a whole world to be able to reach out to folks. So initially, we had to turn all our trainings. We were headed down to San Francisco.
which actually was kind of a blessing. We really did not want to drive the fifth wheel through San Francisco. So when it went online, it was like, oh, this is kind of nice. And it's kind of nice to go out in your kitchen, grab your coffee, and go into the next room when you're training. Versus if we were on the road, we'd be there at 7 a.m, trying to set things up and all. And now it's like 5 till 8, you walk in and set everything up. So that's been kind of nice. But what's really been cool is I work with people who are working with running groups of domestic violence offenders. And on one of the programs I work with, she was going to be in training for 3 weeks and was not going to be able, and then there was a holiday in there. And so she wasn't going to be able to run her groups. We just hated the idea of them going 3 weeks without any intervention. And I said, well, goodness, we have Zoom. I can join in and do this. And I had already met the group a couple of months earlier. So it worked out great. And they're like, oh my God, the author is going to run our class, and which was really nice and humbling, because of course I couldn't get my computer to work as far as the videos, and I couldn't get other things working. And it was like, okay, I guess it's not a matter of competency. This is about God working in their lives. But that would have never happened had we not had Zoom. That just wouldn't have been an option to even think about. Now that's something we'll think about in the future.
Yeah. Rick, one positive for you. What's been a good thing in all this?
He gets to spend more time with me.
What more can I say?
There you go. All right.
Yeah. I guess the one thing that's positive is I really believe that I have grown closer to God. Mm-hmm. I didn't have I was for some of those wonderful distractions that I've created, whether it's traveling or working on the house, they just kind of went beside themselves, and I was really able to focus a lot on God, learn, and he's still, man, what can I say? This process of sanctification is quite different.
Yeah. And Jennifer, you had an interesting positive, because you were helping me do the DCC dailies, and you noted that because of doing all those interviews, you got to know a whole lot more people at DCC than you did before.
Yeah, definitely. I know a lot of people at DCC, but I know their face and maybe their name, but that was about what I knew of them. And so by the time we got done with because we did 100 of them, I think, it's funny now because I see people at church all the time that I would have not really stopped and had conversation with, and now we do, because just of what we did with the DCC today. So it was really fun to get to know people. Mm-hmm.
That's great. I asked people what were some of the funny things that they'd experienced, and Dave Clinton, who was going to join us but wasn't able to at the last minute, he said that he's learned to keep his haircut shorter so that he doesn't end up with the weird poofy things on the side if he can't get to a barber. So a couple people seem to feel that I have some weird face masks that I wear. I'm not sure what that's all about. Yeah, it's actually true. I did have some weird face masks.
Yes, I think that was one of my things, Tim. That meeting where you had the one that looked like you, but it wasn't you. It was just like, this is too freaky. I just can't. Ugh.
You mean this one?
Yes.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, Tim, that was the one that I said I can't unsee that, pal.
And Tim, the one you wore at Christmas house, that one totally freaked me out. It was like, I can't even look at you with that mask on.
Anything I can do to brighten your day.
Yeah.
Well, maybe one or two of you talk about what are some of the lessons that the Lord has taught you in the midst of all of this. Aaron, I know you jotted down some stuff. Oh, I think you're muted.
It's been a lot of learning patience and being trapped with the kids all day, every day is exhausting. And so learning different ways of patience. And then to the being more intentional with our time, as far as if we're going to go do something with someone, you're not just going to want to sit and be on your phone the whole time, which is something, you know, our age and younger tend to do. You sit and you're together on your phone. You know, if we're going to be with someone, it's making sure it's around something and just being, so relationships were cultivated differently over the last year, because that time you're together is so much more treasured and special that it just allowed for a lot of interesting conversations. I actually got a lot closer to one of my friends because they had kids the same age as ours. And so we'd been kind of passing friends before, but because of this, we spent almost every day together during the summer because we were bubble friends. And so I just got to know her a lot better. And then too, I think God kind of prepared us going into this, in that the day before shutdown, our house closed, the selling of our house down in Bremerton. And then that actually, this day before, I had an interview for a job. And as I'm walking into the job, just, Lord, I do not want this job. I don't know why I'm interviewing for this. I don't know why I did this. And it was a job I should have had. You know, it was a job I was more than qualified for. I was the number one on their list and I didn't get it. Well, and then less than a month ago, when I'm starting to think again, okay, I want to go back to work, a job came to me. And so I started actually working last week. You know, in COVID, I got a job. So,
and one that works with
that works with the kids and still being on a COVID schedule. I mean, so I think God's blessed us in just timing for our family.
That's good. That's good. One of the questions I had asked too was, what were some of the changes that you think will carry on long term? And certainly I think this appreciation, this treasuring of friendships and in-person time is something we're all going to feel. Burnett, you mentioned one thing was kind of cute that you think you will probably continue doing after COVID.
And that is singing Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star as I wash my hands.
Singing what?
We've heard a lot of happy birthdays.
That's how you time yourself for 30 seconds washing your hands, is singing Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star.
Some people do Row, Row, Row Your Boat. It's whatever song you want to pick.
So many happy birthdays around here.
Yeah.
That'll work too. So musical washing your hands. Well, hey, as we are going to wrap this bit up, is there maybe just a quick word of encouragement that a few of you would want to share with the rest of the church family? Rick, anything you'd have to share?
You know, yeah. And you know, we often spout a lot of Christianese, like, well, you know, God's really in control. And, you know, if you just trust him more, everything will be okay. And, you know, the thing is, it's really true. Mm-hmm. And as we grow closer to him and we, like, you know, Carlene and the rest of you talked about, that's where I was encouraging is the more we seek him, what happens? What does he promise? You know, that's it. I mean, you know, through this whole thing, I mean, there has been some, I felt like on a roller coaster at times, but you know, God is bringing us through this. He's strengthening us. I believe that we're going to be stronger as a body when this is done. Because, you know, it won't be how you doing anymore. It's how are you doing?
Yeah, that's good. Carlene, how about you? Any word of encouragement?
I'm really kind of surprised at my level of contentment. And I am such a people person that I just, hugging, you know, and all that. And I'm so content. And it's like Rick alluded to and said, that whole God is in control thing. Well, duh, he is. And another thing that I've been so conscious of is people's ingenuity. I mean, who would have thought we can do church? We can do women's Bible study. We can do like Nada can do her, whatever it is you do, Nada, her training. I mean, it's just, Jennifer can get to know people in the church. Aaron can get a job. It's just like, wow. A year ago, a year and a little less than a year ago, to think the whole world is going to shut down, the world as we know it, the country as we knew it. And my goodness, a year later, some of us are thriving in ways that we never would have. I still would have had my time with the Lord every morning. That's what I do. And I find great joy in that. But it's like it's magnified. And whenever, I definitely want to get back to being able to see my kids and my grandkids more often. But what I have gained in this year, I would just not trade for anything, not even seeing my grandkids.
That's saying a lot, Carlene.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Hey, thank you guys so much for taking a few minutes and just sharing a bit of your experience. And we'll talk to y'all later.
Hey,
Thanks, Tim.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Hope to see you real soon in person.
Bye.
I
Well, we've got Danny Golding and Kurt and Jerry Bidinger with us. They weren't able to be with the other panel when we did that interview, but both of you have had some kind of unique experiences and perspectives on this year of COVID. And Kurt and Jerry, maybe I'll start with you because your experience goes back to the earliest days. You just barely got back to the United States before this all started, didn't you?
Yes.
Yeah.
So where were you before you got here?
We were both in Kosh, Turkey, and we came back and planned to go back to Turkey about in middle of April, but were prevented from doing that because of COVID.
And you guys, up to this point, you've been living a good part of the year in Turkey, right? What is it that you do there?
We own and operate something called Spa for the Soul, which is a contemplative retreat center for believers to come and spend time with the Lord, basically, to have sheltered silence and listening and care. And normally, yes, we are there from October through May. And last year, we had a baby due in late March. And so Kurt came ahead of me a week, and I stayed for some board meetings and then flew over after him. And I was going out just as they were closing airports all over the place.
Wow.
And so some of our board members, it's a Christian counseling center in Antalya that I work with, and they had traveled from the States for the board meeting, and they were really struggling to find flight routes that could get them back home.
Wow.
And had Kurt not gone ahead of me, I would have stayed, I think, because of the fear of bringing something to my family who was about to have a baby.
The sweetie, what is her name?
Deirdre, Bibai.
Deirdre. And so Dan and Ada Bidinger had their first little one, and she is a sweetheart. So if you had stayed in Turkey, what would it have been like? What did lockdown look like there?
Well, initially, for the first 3 months, people 65 and over were not allowed to leave the house.
But like not at all?
Like not at all, like not go for a walk.
Couldn't go to the bank, couldn't go to the grocery store.
You couldn't drive your car. You had to stay in the house. And early on, people were like, well, but we need money and we need food. And the police themselves were actually doing those services for them.
Wow.
And then over time, more help and services built up. But even if it was a doctor's appointment or a flight out of the country, which the borders were closed for several months, so there weren't any flights, but you had to get a permit from the police if you
Wow.
were 65 and older.
Now, when you said you had to stay in the house, could you go out in your yard?
We don't know.
Okay.
Turkey tends to be more high density living, and so not so many people have yards. We do at Spa for the Soul, and we assume that we could have done our yard work and stuff, but we don't
But for
know.
an apartment dweller, they were basically locked down completely.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Wow, amazing. Now, Danny, you had a little different lockdown experience just recently because you spent a day or two at the hospital, didn't you?
I did.
So what was that like?
Well, I had a small stroke, and thankfully I'm all better. But I did have to take an ambulance to Olympic Medical Center in Port Angeles, and I was expecting, my husband to follow in the car and be with me, and the paramedics told him, no, you need to stay home and wait a few hours and then call in. And I have to say that all the care I got from the paramedics and the hospital is amazing. But it's very strange to, be in the hospital and only be able to talk to your spouse on the phone. And then he had to just wait for phone calls. So it was a very little disconcerting to know that I can't have a hug for my husband, or and I think all the hospital staff is aware of that. And a lot of, when they would walk around your bed, they would just touch your leg, or they would, I had a lady that took me for an MRI, and we were talking about our faith, and she was a Christian also. So she gave me a big hug and she dropped me back off. And so I really saw a lot of people at the hospital reaching out and just touching your shoulder, or, being very caring. Had a nice visit from the hospital chaplain, and he prayed with me. It was just a really nice experience, other than not having your spouse.
Yeah. Yeah, we actually got just a little flavor of that this past weekend. Our middle son, his wife, they just had a baby, and she had a little spike happen with some blood pressure, and they ended up taking her in the hospital. And when our son called us, he and his wife's mother were sitting in the car in the parking lot for 3 hours.
Wow.
Waiting to find out what was going on, because they wouldn't let them in the hospital, and this was down in California.
Mm-hmm.
So, well, wow, so many people that have gone through these experiences, both with international travel, and of course, great reminder that people overseas have, in many countries, had far more restrictive lockdowns than we have. And the real difficulty for people here in hospitals, nursing homes, that, being cut off from loved ones. I think that has been to me, one of the hardest, saddest aspects to see within our own country, is what has happened to people who are either in nursing homes or hospitals. So, well, thank you both for taking a few minutes to share your experiences.
You're welcome.
You're welcome, Tim. Bless you.
Okay, so where are we now that we've moved into phase 2? Well, back when this all started, there was an article that we all read as staff that said we shouldn't think about this as being like a blizzard. A blizzard, you just kind of hunker down and wait for it to pass, but that really we were entering into a mini ice age, that this was going to be a prolonged period, and coming out of it was going to be slow. And I would say that the authors of that article were very prescient in what they saw coming. But we are getting through it, and we are beginning to come out of it. And we recognize this is going to be a rebuilding process over the months ahead. But there are things that are happening. As I said, we are back to in-person services now. While we still can't do congregational singing per se, we have live music there again, 2 morning services, children's ministries have started, our youth ministries, they're meeting together on a weekly basis. The deep dive program we're doing, this is one of those. We're going to keep doing these through the end of May. I think we're going to take a break this summer, and then we'll see what we do come fall. But we want to keep using this venue to just give you more insight into what we're doing as a church body. And then we'll see what our plans look like as we move into fall and as we move through this summer. And as things begin to open up more and more, we plan to just keep pushing forward to keep making ministry open up more and more. One verse that has stood out to me as I have been thinking about my own process over these last few months, it comes out of Psalm 131. It's the first two verses. David says, "O Lord, my heart is not lifted up. My eyes are not raised too high. I do not occupy myself with things too great and too marvelous for me, but I have calmed and quieted my soul like a weaned child with his mother. Like a weaned child is my soul within me." The first few weeks, maybe the first few months of this pandemic, I wasn't at rest, that's for sure. There was an awful lot to do, and there was a lot of uncertainty about the future. But I think as we've moved through this, the Lord has been working in me just to create a quieter heart. And I like this image he uses of a weaned child. You know how it is when you have a newborn and they get near mommy. They start looking for their next meal. They start rooting around. They get restless. They begin to fuss and cry. The idea of being this weaned child is that they're at peace. They're not in this state of agitation. They can rest quietly in their mother's arms. And I felt that in my own heart, that while it's been difficult, it's been tiring, it's been lonely at times, I also find my heart feeling more quiet and more at rest. And I hope that you're feeling quiet too. I am still eager for life to get back to something like normal. But I think I'm also learning how to be quiet in the midst of it and to rest in what God's given me for today. I happened to run across a video. Burnett passed it along to me. It was actually a birthday message that Joni Eareckson Tada recorded, I believe it was a year ago. But in it, she gave, I thought, a wonderful perspective on dealing with trial. And Joni, since this was recorded, has herself gone through COVID. She actually thought she was going to die. And of course, because of her physical limitations, it was very serious for her to have COVID. The Lord has restored her and she's recovering. This message was recorded before that had happened to her. But I want to share it with you. I actually contacted Joni and friends, asked for permission to share this. They were very gracious to do so. So let me just share that with you and listen to Joni's perspective on dealing with trials.
Hi, I'm Joni Eareckson Tada. And have you ever looked around and wondered, how did I get here? How'd this happen? Well, it's how I feel turning 70 years old. Did I say that? Actually, I did. If you had told me back in the late 60s when I became paralyzed in that diving accident that I would live to the age of 70, oh my goodness, my doctors would have laughed at you because I'm living way beyond the statistics. And you know what? I am living well. I'm living joyfully. Yes, a broken neck is a tragedy, but God has the capacity, get this, to look at our suffering through a narrow lens and a wide angle one. When God looks at a painful event through a narrow lens, like my broken neck, he sees the tragedy for what it is, and he is deeply grieved. I mean, God felt the sting in his chest when I dove into shallow water and crunched my neck and severed my spinal cord. But when God looked at it through his wide angle lens, he saw the tragedy in relation to everything leading up to it, as well as flowing out of it. He saw Johnny and Friends, and he saw family retreats, and he saw Wheels for the World and Warrior Getaways. He saw marriage getaways. He saw hundreds of thousands of people with disabilities and their families coming to Jesus Christ. He saw this amazing mosaic stretching into eternity. And friend, it's this mosaic with all its parts, both good and evil, which brings God utter delight. And so as I turn 70, I'm saying no to a narrow view of my life. I'm not going to go down that dark, grim path. And I encourage you to do the same. Say it with me, Jesus, give me faith to believe in your wide-angle view of the difficult things that happen in my life. Give me your perspective so I can delight in the beautiful mosaic that one day I'm going to understand. Would you please celebrate that with me? Let's encourage each other, strengthen each other with this view on suffering, and celebrate my birthday. Make sure that beautiful mosaic continues to spread to many more special needs families around the world. Make my day by donating to my birthday. And as you do, let's see what God does with that marvelous mosaic in this next decade. Thank you. God bless you, and thanks for wishing me a happy birthday.
Well, thanks for taking some time this evening just to think with me back over these past months. We don't know what the future holds, but we know who holds the future, don't we? Well, I trust you have a good evening. God bless.